get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Orrin Klopper of Netsurit. Orrin, I'm going to introduce you formally in a second, but I always like to mention other episodes people should check out. And since Orrin was one of the founding members of EO South Africa, I've had some amazing EO members on my podcast. I've had Matt Zolk of EO Tulsa. He runs Key Renter Property Management. They're an easy button for investors to manage their properties. Robert Hartline of EO Nashville, CEO of Callproof. But before that, he started a chain of cell phone stores and sold it. Zach Wilcox of EO Chicago runs Fide Freight. I think he's just a dynamo, super young, and has grown his logistics business. And I've had Vern Harnish on, who started EO and is the author of Scaling Up. So people can check that one out as well. And before I introduce Orrin, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to your Dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We help you run your podcast. We're an easy button for people to launch and run their podcast. You know, for me, Orrin, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way to do that over the past decade than to profile the people and companies I most admire and feature what they're working on and learn from them, and other people can learn from them as well. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, you can go to rise25.com. You can email us support@rise25.com. And today I'm excited. Orrin Klopper is co-founder and CEO of Netsurit, which is a managed services provider firm over the last 24 plus years. Orrin, I'm curious, like 24 plus years ago, what this industry and landscape look like, but he's grown to over 100 people and over $30 million in revenue through acquisitions and organic growth. So we're going to find kind of both sides of those coins. They have established 5 locations around the world. They are a managed IT, cloud, and security services company, and of a globally awarded Dreams program, which I'm excited to learn more about as a key part of their Netsurit aspirational culture. And as I mentioned, he's one of the founding members of Entrepreneurs Organization in South Africa. So, Orrin, thanks for joining me.
Absolute pleasure.
You know, we were talking before we hit record here. I want you to talk a little bit about what Netsurit does and then differentiation, because you were saying how there's, in a lot of industries, there's a commoditization, at least a perception of a commoditization, even though when you dig deeper, there's a lot of differences in companies. So talk about what Netsurit does, and then we'll talk about differentiation.
Sure. You know, if you're an organization of, let's say, between 25 to 1,000 users in your business, either you have an IT function, either you've outsourced that entirely, or you have an internal department that uses partners to support them. So we either are that IT department or we augment an internal IT department. Primary skill set sits in the Microsoft space, so deeply certified and qualified from a Microsoft perspective. And we provide core security managed services and support managed services for the infrastructure. And the part that we're the most excited about is our offering called Innovate, which is this new differentiated blue ocean service that we've been delivering into our customer base for about a year.
Talk about that for a second.
Great. You know, I always look at the dynamic of, or I try and ask myself is, are we really making a difference in the lives of our customers? And I think you do when you deliver a great support service, making sure that their email is working, or making sure that their onboarding is happening seamlessly. You definitely are making a difference, but are you really achieving the level of impact that a technology environment in a business can? And so we've built the service called Innovate, which has an ROI guarantee. So if you're spending $2,000 a month and that accrues to $24,000 in the year, we will find a $24,000 ROI for you based on a few pillars: automation, adoption and change management, direct cost savings, and leveraging the existing technology that you've already invested in. Because what we find so much, Jeremy, is businesses have invested in a whole lot of technology, and the users and their people haven't yet really embraced it to make a difference. So this is the offering I'm very excited about, and we're just getting unbelievable feedback from our customers on this.
Yeah, it's so true. It's kind of, I picture like the human brain, whatever I don't know what the stats are. We use whatever it is, 15%. But I know there's stuff that we have that I feel like we are using 3% of this, and it does so much more, but we just don't have the time to even, I mean, we're using it for its core function and not exploring all the other ways we can, benefit from it. I'd love to hear, why do people come to you? Because I know people come to you for certain things, and then when they come to you, they realize you do so much more, like you mentioned with Innovate.
Yeah.
What makes people first come to you?
Yeah, look, often it's a breach. They've had a security breach is one reason that customers come to. Another, their current service provider, in the case of an outsourced relationship, is just not delivering and really letting them down. The other is fast growth. So what we've seen with organizations that are growing quickly, they realize how technology can have an impact on their ability to scale, and they know that's not their core business. And how do they find a partner that can help them embrace and make the most of that technology and scale quickly? Those would just be 3 examples.
I'd love to hear about breach. I think I don't know if there is a book about it, but I always picture the good books are like one words. Like yours would be breach. And then you probably some crazy stories about what's happened. I know you probably can't share the names of the companies. Are there any that stick out that you just from a higher level perspective, what have you seen when someone gets breached?
No, it literally can bring a business to its knees. So I'll give you one example. We had a customer that was breached. Long story short, we'd made a recommendation. They had various offices around the VPN technology that they used. They didn't have it in their budget now, so we got a rental option to buy time. And without getting too technical, those secondhand devices provided an opportunity for the hackers to get in, and they got in, leveraging ransomware. And Jeremy, I cannot tell you how professional they were. They told us that they had like fully documented letters. We're going to turn this into an opportunity for you to learn from this, et cetera, et cetera. And so anyway, we went through a long process. Obviously, it made huge changes, but this literally brought this business to its knees for a short period of time. Another example was
really quickly on that, Orrin. Were there
Sure.
threats asking for money? What were
Yes.
they asking for?
They were asking for Bitcoin. Yeah.
I think each Bitcoin now, I don't know when someone's listening to this, they are probably hovering around $20,000. So I don't know how many they were asking for, but that's not a cheap ask.
No. And what blew me away, Jeremy, was just how, I mean, it's not professional to do anything illegal, but it was run like a business. You could see they were very bright, very well thought out, very, structured. I mean, it was, so that's a more sophisticated one. But the simplest examples are simply a user clicking on an email, and where someone masquerades. So give you an example. Customer of ours has a customer. The customer is due to pay them 2 million euros. Okay? The hackers masquerade as someone from our customer saying, please pay it into this account. And so there's all it is it's just a user that has been potentially fooled Because you can have all the security in the world, but if your users are not actually understanding that you need to really be circumspect of any email that's asking for those types of details. And the 2 million euros actually was transferred, but they ended up having a relationship with one of the large banks, and they were able to get it reversed. So fortunately, it didn't have the impact that it could have. But it can happen to anybody. And probably the biggest category of awareness outside of the hygiene and fundamental core security elements is educating your users. And there are various ways of doing that.
It's not, Orrin, I told you so conversation you want to have with someone. Well, it's not in the budget now, and then it gets breached. And it's like, well, you don't want to say I told you so, but at that point, it's kind of apparent.
No, and what does happen, unfortunately, is that the customer is so overwhelmed and stressed, they can tend to take it out on their managed services or their IT partner. But we throw the cavalry out, and we don't even get into that. We do every single thing we can to mitigate the impact and to learn from it and to close those gaps. And we've not lost a single customer that has had a breach, because in any service industry, any B2B business, that those difficult times are when you build the deepest and strongest relationships. And we've managed to come out of those much stronger.
Yeah. From that perspective, the person who had that threat and they were really professional, what is best practice to respond to that threat? Because I'm sure that they were completely overwhelmed, up in arms, and some people may just think this is going to go away also.
Yeah. So to share some of the sort of learnings that we've and approaches that we've taken. Number one, you don't pay, which is controversial. And people, might say, well, I don't pay, because we think that's a slippery slope. Because you can't pay, and then it depends on what they have been able to gain access to. Number two is do everything you practically can in the short term to close the gap between what allowed them to get in and how you can shore that up as soon as possible. And a big piece of that we've seen is also user education. Those probably be the two key points.
Yeah. Talk about, with growing the company, the landscape when you first started. Okay, for a second. What was it like first started? And then I want to talk about at what point did you institute kind of a growth through acquisition strategy?
Okay, great.
What was it like when you first started?
So when we first started, it was Y2K. We first started the business officially in 1997, entrepreneurially in 95, but leading up to 1999, most SMB businesses, small and medium enterprises, were being absolutely exploited by IT service providers. And so there was a huge opportunity to go in there, be honest, be transparent. This is really what you need. So to find new customers at that time, and probably from, let's call it 98, 99, round about until well past 2010, and even up to, let's call it 2015, it wasn't a commoditized, insanely competitive space. It was relatively easy to get customers because SMEs and entrepreneurial businesses were adopting technology. The adoption was growing. The number of companies that were seeing the importance of technology was growing. So that was very, very a fun growth period.
Yeah. Most people
learned a lot of lessons.
They didn't have websites, right?
Yeah.
Or did they?
No, and their security approach was the machine that they had the accounting system on. It was off the network. So, you laugh at it now, but you think it's like, it probably wasn't a bad idea back in those days, So it was not easy to get customers, but much easier than it is to now.
What would you call and tell people? Because technology was ever changing. It was new. some people maybe it wasn't there weren't as many providers, but it may be a harder explanation at that point.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we weren't anywhere near as sophisticated from a marketing perspective as we are now. And we probably the one marketing outreach we leveraged in those days, we actually did a research survey and we gave those results to everybody that participated. And we would survey anywhere between 2,000 to 4,000 small and medium enterprises, entrepreneurial businesses. And we ran that program for about 6 to 7 years. So that was one way that we engaged, is we were able to share that impact, information back with them. And one of the key thesis or sort of areas we were trying to discuss was how can entrepreneurial SMB businesses leverage technology to have a positive impact on their competitiveness. So that was the one way we reached out. So that was some of the theme. And then the other was, really from a skills perspective, because we've always had unbelievable Microsoft skills. And we were able to make sure that organizations could adopt the technology and use it in the best way in their businesses. But we were not very sophisticated, and a lot came from relationships. So when you look at many growing small and medium enterprise businesses, the relationship comes from the Jeremy, from the Orrin, and the other leadership team. And for the first time, from an organic growth perspective, probably in the last, I would say, 3 years, our growth has coming. 90% of our leads are coming from raw marketing activities that are outside of our relationships.
I love the research survey. I mean, that's sophisticated, I would think, even on today's standards, actually. I love that.
Thank you.
At what point did you decide acquisition? You're going to implement acquisition as a strategy for growth?
So we have used it in an ad hoc way for quite a few years. We decided on it being our primary growth lever in 2019. And when we're going into 2020, a couple of things. So we have quite a mature strategic planning process. So at the end of 2019, somewhere in September, October, we kick off strategic planning. We could see our organic growth was in a hole. It was bad, like really bad. And then we saw the pandemic coming as we went into 2020. So now we've got organic growth in a hole with the pandemic coming, and we don't know what impact this is going to have. So we just aggressively attacked. We went through the most vicious cost cutting we've ever done, bar nothing. And we did two things with that cost cutting. 50% we put back into profits and cash flow. And the other 50% we put into something called a growth and innovation fund. So for the first time in a while, I had a whole lot of budget. And we retained a buy-side advisory firm from an acquisitive growth perspective. Over that period, over the last 3 years, we've increased our organic marketing spend 5 times. We spend 5 times more now than we did 3 years ago. And we invested heavily in acquisitive growth. And in 2021, we were able to conclude 3 deals and made some mistakes, some serious learnings. And we have 3 other deals in the pipeline right now. And this is one of our primary growth levers.
What do you look for? Let's say someone's listening. Or they're like,
yeah, sure.
Actually, we fit perfectly, or we should contact Orrin and talk about a deal.
Sure.
What do you look for?
Sure. We're in the space anywhere between, let's say, $3 to $8 million in revenue. We're looking for organizations, MSPs, that have 60% or more recurring revenue, at least a 10% EBITDA. And we're looking for entrepreneurs that deeply value their people, deeply value the relationships they've built with their customers over the years, and are looking for another chapter in their entrepreneurial journey. Because our approach is we want to keep the key leaders. There might be 2 or 3 key leaders and one wants to expert. We want to keep the key leaders because the greatest limitation to rapid growth is access to highly talented leaders. And we know that part of the acquisitive growth is for us to bring those leaders along with us on this journey.
I mentioned there's 5 locations around the world. Do you have a preference of geographical location?
Yes,
of those deals?
Yeah, primarily in the US.
Got it. That's great. And then how long do they take typically? I know they may vary, but from when you discover a company to finalizing a deal, is there an average?
So maybe just to highlight a couple of steps in the process, just to give clarity. So initially it's a relationship building where very few numbers are exchanged. It's just get to know each other. Is there actually a fit? Then at some point in that process, so let's call that, I mean, I've done that as long as 3 months or as short as a month, where the chemistry is just right and the timing seems right. Then the next phase is we will agree, okay, can we do an initial financial diligence to understand, or an initial diligence where we build a financial model that can take anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks, depending on how readily available that information is. Then we draft an LOI, a letter of interest. And the way we do the LOI is it's actually exactly what the purchase agreement would look like, so that there are no surprises in that space from signed LOI to the purchase agreement. And typically, so that process, so it might be anyway, let's call it 3 to 6 weeks to do that initial financial model. Agree the LOI can be another 2 to 4 weeks. And then from LOI to close can be anywhere from 2 months to 4 months.
Mm-hmm. What's one learning? Because I'm sure in this process, you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you bring your learnings to the next scenario. What's one learning that you wish you knew in the first couple deals?
Oh, that's a great question. In the beginning, we don't want to talk about numbers, but also we want to be respectful of each other's time. And at some point in that initial kind of connecting and relationship building, just get a high level view of are you roughly realistic from a valuation perspective? So that's one thing. There have been a good few times where I've just had such amazing chemistry and we're loving chatting to each other and feeling inspired from sharing learnings. And then we kind of get to the numbers discussion. They're literally expecting 3 times what is realistic based on the market. So I've wasted their time. And
their expectation was higher as far as the valuation goes.
Yes.
That's hard to know without that conversation, though. Yeah.
For sure, it's hard to know. But I mean, just to give you context, I mean, depending who you talk to, there are between 20 to 40,000 MSPs just in the US alone. And there's been enough deals done and enough understanding to be able to say this is really kind of what a fair ballpark looks like. And then the other learning that is difficult to balance is how do you get a deeper insight into the culture of the organization without alarming the people of that organization. So I'm an entrepreneur and Netsurit is approached to buy my business. Now, I don't want to go and just tell all my people that we're considering selling the business, and next thing Netsurit comes in, asks all sorts of questions, and then the deal's off. So balancing that dynamic, because what we have found is without being able to speak to more than just who we're dealing with, it's hard to ascertain from a culture perspective. So we've worked out some ways of learning from that. But I think the one thing that any entrepreneur can do is just to be able to say to their people, look, it might not happen now. It could happen in 3 years or 4 years, but I am at some point going to look on bringing a partner to take us to the next chapter of our journey, so that when there is that type of discussion, you can go a little bit deeper. And then, I think the other piece that we've seen again and again is really, for me, is a growth mindset. And it's a challenging dynamic to be able to measure that, because it's being able to put ego aside as a leader and adopt a growth mindset to be able to say, you know what, I used to do things like this, and now I'm going to think like one business, and we're going to do things in this way, and be able to put the ego aside. Because for us, any business we acquire, the leaders that adopt a growth mindset in that business, they will end up with more opportunities than they can say yes to. It just might look different to what you're doing today.
Yeah, and I love the verbiage of what you said there, which is bring on a partner. It just sounds less, I'm going to lose my job, right? Like if you say we're going to be purchased, there is a acquisition, bring on a partner, which is, it just is for the leadership team. And I love the podcast, Built to Sell, and he talks a lot about this. How do you tell your team? Because you're gonna have to tell them at some point. When do you tell them, and that kind of thing. So there's some good episodes there on that.
And maybe to talk from my own examples, so I used to see the private equity space, Jeremy, as the axis of evil. They're going to come in, they're going to fire everybody, they're going to ruin the culture, et cetera, et cetera. So, but there are almost 60 private equity firms that are focused on the MSP space in the US. 60. So that is a huge economic force. So to ignore that would just be absolutely crazy as an MSP. So we're privately held. We have no private equity partner. But at some point, we are going to bring on a private equity partner. But what I have done is made sure I deeply understand it. So of all the books and articles and things I've read, probably the one that kind of started me sort of saying, okay, private equity isn't all that bad, is a book by, it's more like an essay of about 120 pages by Orrin Klopper. I think it's called Lessons for CEOs from Private Equity. And then that kind of made me think, okay, there's something here. And then I read Adam Kofi's book, Private Equity Playbook. So Adam has done 58 acquisitions. He was the CEO of 3 private equity-backed businesses. And he was never, ever from a private equity firm, but he literally led those businesses with multiple private equity owners. And so what we've done is we've retained him as an advisor, and we are saying to our people now, and we have no private equity deals that we're considering, and it's not yet the timing for us. We're saying this is going to happen. At some point, we're going to bring on a growth partner who's going to be able to help us execute on our growth strategy.
I love that. So who is the author again?
Adam Kofi, Koffey. He's also done another book. Both of them are Amazon bestsellers, the Exit Playbook.
Cool. Check that out.
And just the most down-to-earth guy. And he makes it simple and easy to understand.
Love it. How do you protect culture? You bring on these other companies. You have a lot of people, integrating into Netsurit. How do you protect culture? So the one book we read called Scaling Up Excellence, and there was a concept they spoke about in there of, excuse the religious terms, it's Buddhism versus Catholicism. It's almost, and the idea of, what do you want to prescribe in the business that you buy, and is non-negotiable and dictate in almost an authoritarian way, and what is less prescriptive and more, this is the core philosophy and concept, these are the values, and the rest we leave flexible. So we've been thinking a lot about this, and actually when we look at an acquisition, we make a list of things and we say, what are we going to be Buddhist on? What are we going to be Catholic on? And literally taking that. That's funny.
So we want to protect the soul of that organization. We want to protect the magic that has attracted us to that organization and that business. And culture is actually not something that can be performance measured. It's not something that can be disciplined unless you get to a value side where it becomes pretty black and white. It's more of a community dynamic. And that community dynamic is so sensitive. So we employ various tactics to protect that. But probably the primary one is keep the great managers and leaders. Wherever we can do that, because I think a whole lot of a good culture lives in those great managers and leaders. And then our dreams program. We bring our dreams program in. But that's another discussion where you won't believe it. Sometimes it's perceived negatively. And it's almost seemed like a cult. And well, I think some organizations, Jeremy, have the view that, and the people in those organizations, my work life is my work life, my personal life is my personal life. Those two shall never meet. Our thinking is the exact opposite. We say they're inextricably linked. You spend more of your waking hours at work or engaging in work than you do anything else in your working life. How could they be not be inextricably linked? So that dynamic is a direct conflict, and we encourage. We're both members of EO, and you're in a forum. So in a forum, you're encouraged to share openly and be vulnerable. In our dreams program, in a dream group, it's forum rules. It's highly confidential. You can share what's going on in your life, what you're struggling with. There's experience sharing, almost in a Gestalt type way. So sometimes where there isn't that thinking in the organization, it is seen as a negative thing. And the truth is, it's not for everybody, right? Not everybody wants to be in a workplace where they're asking you to engage so openly and transparently. We definitely respect the idea. So we don't force anybody. You don't have to. But it's difficult if you're not going to be part of this in our culture.
So talk about the Dreams program. It was one of the things I was excited about this interview, to just researching you and your company and what you do. You do have this globally awarded Dreams program, which is a key part of culture. And what I love is people share goals from their personal life, if they want to achieve something, if they want to do something. So just talk about the Dreams program.
Yeah, sure. So to give a little bit of context and history, in 2004, one of our top engineers, back in 2004, there were very little cloud. Servers were in a server room, which was not really a server room with no air conditioning. And in summer, those servers would crash because it would be so hot. One of our engineers goes out, one of our top guys, he's actually in our team in New York today, just one of the most amazing humans. And I get a call from one of our teams saying he's sitting in front of the server. He's not typing. He's not talking. He's just sitting. He had a full-on burnout. I realized at that point, as I thought about this, if we're going to build something significant, we need a culture where people can be balanced and they can do their ultimate passion, which is the technology industry. Because a lot of these guys will just go home and do it on the weekend anyway because they love it so much. And how do we actually proactively manage that balance? And then in 2007, I attended the EMP program. And Cameron Herold mentioned a book called The Dream Manager. So I read that book. And then I read Tony Schwartz and Jim Lure's book, The Power of Full Engagement. And then I read Tony Hsieh's book, Delivering on Happiness. I actually read that. I read that after we launched the program. And essentially, we launched the program in 2008. And just to explain to you what it is, at the beginning of the year, the calendar year, we all create what's called a dream book, which is your top 10 personal goals and dreams visualized, which in our business is, the way we do it is, it's a PowerPoint deck with 10 images. And so now we have this for, hundreds of people in our business. You get put then into a dream group, which is like Forum in EO, which can be anywhere between 6 to 10 people. And you meet once a month and you support each other in a way to achieve your personal goals and dreams. We have a section in our performance review line management meetings, which we do every 6 months, where the line manager has a discussion with his team member around, how are you doing? We have in our exco once a month, we've got red, green, yellow. Are you coping? From a purpose perspective, supporting the dreams of the doers. And each exco leader puts red, green, or yellow. And then we also have a week in advance dynamic where at the beginning of the week, on a Monday before 12 o'clock, you capture the 3 to 5 actions that are going to take you towards achieving your goals and dreams. And that gets circulated to your dream coach. And that's really how far we go. There's so much to goal setting and achieving the micro details, but we just want to light the fire and nurture it and create a safe space in our culture for people to talk about what they really want in their lives and to openly and pursue it. Like we've had people resign because of the Dreams program because they realized this is not what they wanted to do. And that's amazing. And then 3 years later, I get like a text or something. The one guy, I remember, it's in a picture of him on the wall of China, because it was in his dream book. And it's just like, I can't tell you how much joy and meaning and purpose that brings to life.
Why 10? I'm curious.
So we took a process. We took a methodology from a guy called Glenn McGurk. That you take the spoke of 8 spokes of the wheel of life, brainstorm per spoke as if there were no limits, narrow it down to your top 25, and then narrow it down to your top 10. And then the methodology actually talks to a top 3. But some people only do 6. Some people do 4. I've actually got 11 this year in mind. So it's up to you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be 10.
What are some examples? So you mentioned someone visiting the Great Wall. What are some other examples?
For sure. No, for sure. Like some of them are so simple. Like the one you saw, this woman climbing out of a pool, and it's a guy's grandmother, and she didn't have enough money to repair her pool. He's got it in his dream book. He wants to save up so he can repair his grandmother's pool so she can so she can swim in her pool again. A lot of them have financial goals, achieving savings. A lot of them have travel goals. We've had team members in Ho Chi Minh City. We've got team members in Poland, in Peru, because we have a lot of remote workers. And the funny thing is, everybody wants similar things in their life. It's like similar things: more time with their family, more their health. So we're always prioritizing them, thinking about what's really going to make them the best version of themselves. Because in Jim Lohr and Tony Schwartz's book, The Powerful Engagement, they spoke about the idea that an 8-hour day, if you're balanced and engaged, you can get better results and productivity out of a person than a 16-hour day. It's actually been proven now that is the truth.
Mm. That's amazing. I wrote down all those books. I appreciate it. And I did, I think, 2 episodes with Cameron Harold on the podcast, so people can check that out. He always has great advice on that. Did he speak to the EO group in South Africa, or where'd you hear him?
No, I was at the MIT. The EMP program. Got it.
One thing you mentioned before, which is your Innovate service and automation. And everyone loves saving time and tasks, and that when we do that, we save money and we reduce mistakes too. And so there's a few examples, one of which was a nonprofit in economical development. Could you talk about what you did there?
Yeah, sure. So really, they were struggling with manual processing of high volume of supply invoices and spending about 180 hours on this task. And there are 2 sides to this. One is, there are 2 sides to this. The one is the people doing that work. It is not going to be inspirational, engaging work. And then the other side is just a raw waste of time. So we were literally able to automate that process entirely, leveraging the Microsoft Power Automate platform and some optical character recognition. And now essentially 180 hours has been saved, and that didn't result in someone being let go or anything like that. But now they can do other work that is higher value, more engaging, and more stimulating.
Can you talk about, Orrin, just if there's some of the process of identifying these automation opportunities?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So this can be a lot of fun. And so initially how we do it is we actually offer in the start of an engagement with a potential customers, we offer a business automation assessment, which is about an hour, and there's no cost to that. And we actually will provide key recommendations. It's quite simple. It's a 1-page summary. And in that will be what we understood about your business, from a technology adoption, digital transformation, and automation perspective, what we've heard as far as the key priorities, and then what we believe to be some of the key opportunities. The other way that we do it is we've got an ideation platform called NSpark, where we will get maybe, let's say there's an account, there are 5 people in finance. Let's say it's just 3 people. We'll take 2 of those people, put them on the platform, and literally ask them the question, what are the highest value activities, okay, that you're performing, and how automated are they? And then that goes into a list of ideas, and we literally vote on them to have the ones that potentially can create the greatest value rise to the top. And then you start getting granular on those, saying, okay, how much time is it taking currently? And what would it look like if it was automated? So then you could start leveraging an ROI, and then from there you can make a decision, implement, and then you can let that fund what you do next.
And that's huge value if you can automate some of the highest value activities. I feel like it's a mindset shift for some people because they feel like some of those highest value activities can't or shouldn't be automated. Do you run up against that?
For sure, without a doubt. And it's a deep change management exercise that has to take place so that those team members and potentially leaders in the business feel comfortable. The tough reality is the opportunity that digital transformation in a business represents. You never arrive there. It's perpetual. You need to be thinking like this as a business leader in an organization all the time, because it will always change and there will always be new opportunities. And the way to deal with some of that resistance is if the key leaders are adopting it and embracing it, then it almost becomes ingrained in your culture, and it almost becomes an embracing of a growth mindset. And what you're doing is you're leveraging technology to achieve it. And the bottom line is that a lot of SME entrepreneur organizations are paying for that technology already. And this additional 20, 30, 40, 50% of value can be realized without even spending any more. They literally just need to adopt and embrace what they have.
Yeah. Because I could see you, Orrin, you're like, oh, you know what? You have this 180 hours a month that can be automated with these invoices. Like, Orrin, that can't be automated. I mean, we've been doing it like this for 7 years or whatever, 10 years, right? And it's a mindset shift as well. Yes. There was another company, you worked with, a financial services company. What did you do there?
That's right. So, again, it was some really highly skilled team members who were just manually capturing and transferring tax return records. From cloud-based tax and accounting solution, CCH Access, to SharePoint Online. And it was just wasting, this ended up being about 40 to 50 hours a month. And just leveraging the technology that they had, we were literally able to automate that entire process.
Amazing. I have one last question, Orrin. Before I ask it, I want to point people towards netsurit.com to learn more about what you do, netsurit.com. Learn more about their company and what they're doing there, and check out more episodes of Inspired Insider. Last question, Orrin, you mentioned already some treasure trove of resources, books, people.
Yes.
So I want to do just a quick recap of that, and then any others that you want to mention. You mentioned
for sure.
Adam Coffey. You mentioned Cameron Herold. You mentioned Delivering Happiness. You mentioned The Powerful Engagement. What are some, and The Dream Manager? What are some other ones that people should check out? People or books?
Yeah, for sure. An iconic piece that still I always think about when we look for differentiation as entrepreneurs. I think we have to ask ourselves this question: is the Blue Ocean Strategy. I still believe is one of the most powerful strategy books I've ever read, and just one of Gallup's really most powerful books that still today I believe stands the test of time, which is First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham. And they literally surveyed 80,000. I mean, it's 80,000 companies and over 1 million staff. I went and actually looked at their site. It's over 2 million now. And the deduction they came to is one thing: the relationship and loyalty in organization lives in your line manager, who your manager is, not the company. And then they came up with 12 questions that just talk about engagement. And then, just some iconic ones that just talk to our operating system and values, built to last, good to great, by Jim Collins. And probably the last space, just a couple in here that are just so powerful. You know, when you look at successful organizations and successful people, you've managed to harness habits, because habits are the bedrock that results in us in achieving what we want in our lives and in our careers. And two of the best pieces of work there are Atomic Habits for me, and then Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit. Those are just phenomenally interesting books that I've learned so much from.
I love it. Orrin, I'm going to be the first one to thank you. And I remember listening to that Marcus Buckingham book on audio cassette in my car numerous times. So that is one of my favorites as well. So for people listening, don't know what an audio cassette tape is. It's this square thing, anyway. But everyone check out netsurit.com. Check out more episodes of Inspired Insider. And Orrin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.